Hi everybody, I'm Dr. Whitney Costers, Professor of English, and in this lecture, we are going to take our study of rhetoric to the next level. If you're unfamiliar with or you just need a refresher on the fundamentals of rhetoric, visit the lectures that I have linked below. In those lectures, I look at the rhetorical situation and Aristotle's rhetorical triangle, ethos, pathos, and logos. I even break down a print ad to demonstrate how persuasion operates in the real world. But it's not enough just to recognize that rhetoric exists. You need to start controlling it in your writing, in your speaking, and even in the way that you present yourself day to day. And that's what I'll be discussing in this lecture. Because here's the truth. Rhetoric is everywhere. Every email you send, every text message, every cover letter, every social media post, every campaign speech, every corporate press release, all of it is rhetoric. So it's crucial that you understand it and have a strong command over it. Let's begin at the sentence level. Consider these two statements. Mistakes were made. I made mistakes. Both admit failure, but one hides responsibility while the other takes ownership. Now, politicians famously use the passive construction, mistakes were made, to soften blame, whereas leaders who want to build credibility often choose the active. I made mistakes. The difference is just a few words, but the rhetorical effect is massive. This is why syntax, which is the arrangement of words and phrases, is rhetorical. Passive versus active voice, short sentences versus long one, repetition versus variation. These are choices that create impressions about you as a communicator. Now, let's look at diction. Diction simply means word choice, the particular words an author or speaker selects. But it goes deeper than literal meaning. Words don't just carry meaning, they carry associations. And these associations can frame reality for your reader. Take this real-world example from recent news coverage of a tragic accident in Florida. Two outlets reported on the same event, but their headlines framed it in radically different ways. The New York Post ran, "Illegal immigrant trucker charged in deadly wreck flown back to Florida after he fled to sanctuary state." On the other hand, the San Francisco Chronicle ran, "White House gets key facts wrong as it blames California for 3 traffic deaths in Florida." Already, before we read a single paragraph, we are being pulled into two completely different rhetorical worlds. The New York Post headline begins with "illegal immigrant." Before we know anything else, we've been primed to see this tragedy through the lens of immigration and crime. The diction is highly charged. Words like deadly wreck and fled evoke fear and judgment. This is rhetoric designed to sensationalize and frame the driver as an outsider who doesn't belong. The San Francisco Chronicle headline, however, puts the spotlight somewhere else entirely. It begins with "White House gets key facts wrong." Suddenly, the story isn't about immigration at all. It's about political responsibility. It's also about misinformation and blame shifting. The diction is analytical, corrective. The rhetorical frame is not fear of an outsider, but skepticism toward government authority. But let's go a little deeper. The articles themselves continue these frames. In the New York Post version, the article emphasizes the driver's immigration status. The phrase "illegal immigrant" appears repeatedly, and the piece opens with, "The illegal immigrant truck driver accused of killing 3 people in a massive wreck on a Florida highway has been sent back to the Sunshine State after fleeing to Sanctuary State, California." Notice how the actual details of the crash kind of just fade into the background? Instead, the story is told as a narrative about a criminal outsider. Later, describing video footage, the article says, "Footage from the terrifying incident showed Singh driving the massive truck through an official use only cut-through on a highway. Singh appeared hauntingly unmoved." Words like terrifying and hauntingly unmoved don't just inform, they tell the reader how to feel. This is rhetoric that reinforces fear, outrage, and moral judgment. By contrast, the San Francisco Chronicle's article barely emphasizes the driver's identity at all. Instead, it critiques the White House's response. The White House has gotten key facts wrong as it attempts to harness public sympathy. Here, the emphasis is not on Singh the driver, but on the credibility of government communication. Words like "key facts wrong" and "harness sympathy" frame the entire situation around misinformation and accountability. Same event, same people involved, same deaths, but the interpretation completely changes depending on which article you read. If you read the New York Post piece, you walk away thinking primarily about immigration and crime. If you read the San Francisco Chronicle piece, you walk away thinking primarily about government responsibility and truth in reporting. That's the power of rhetoric. It doesn't just describe the world, it creates different versions of the world for its audience. Now, let's move from words to paragraphs and essays. Let's talk about structure. That's the way that you organize your ideas, and it is also rhetoric. Think of inductive versus deductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning starts with a claim or thesis, and then it supports it with evidence, moving from the general to the specific. Inductive reasoning works in the opposite direction. It begins with examples, observations, or stories, and then builds towards a conclusion, moving from the specific to the general. Both structures persuade, but they work differently. Jonathan Swift's A Modest Proposal is a classic example of inductive persuasion, though delivered through biting satire. He begins by piling up social observations like poverty, starvation, overcrowded streets, families burdened by too many children. Step by step, he leads his reader deeper into the grim realities of 18th century Ireland. Only after this buildup does he unveil his shocking solution, that the poor should sell their children as food to the wealthy. The proposal itself is not meant to be taken literally, but the structure forces readers to reckon with the real injustices Swift exposes. By the time the conclusion arrives, the satire makes his critique of English exploitation and indifference unavoidable. In academic and professional writing, structure signals control. A messy, meandering essay says you don't know what you're arguing. A clear, well-arranged one tells your reader, you can trust me, I know where we're going. Now you might be thinking, okay, but why does this matter beyond the classroom? Here's why. In job interviews, the way you frame your experience determines whether an employer sees you as confident or arrogant, capable or untested. On social media, posts framed as insights or tips get shared, while posts framed as complaints often get ignored. In leadership, a leader who says, we're facing challenges, but here's how we'll overcome them, inspires confidence. One who says, we have problems and I don't know what to do, loses authority. Even in relationships, the way you phrase things can de-escalate or inflame. Saying, I feel unheard is rhetoric. Saying, you never listened to me is also rhetoric, but it's much riskier. Rhetoric is not abstract theory. It is the toolkit that allows you to navigate every situation in which words matter, and words matter in almost every situation. At this level, I want you to start thinking of rhetoric not as a set of terms to memorize, but as a lens of power. When you control your style, diction, syntax, and structure, you're not just writing papers for class. You're preparing for every cover letter you're going to send, every boardroom you'll sit in, every speech you'll give, and every conversation that requires you to persuade, inspire, or defend yourself. So I'd like to give you a challenge. Take a text that you encounter in the real world. It could be a news article, an email from a company, a political speech, a commercial, even a TikTok ad, and analyze not just what it says, but how it says it. Look at the style, the framing, and the structure. And ask yourself, if I were to rewrite this message with a different audience or purpose in mind, how would I change it? That exercise is what moves you from being a passive consumer of rhetoric to an active rhetorician. Because in the end, rhetoric is not just about recognizing persuasion, it's about mastering it. Let me know how you've encountered rhetoric in the real world in the comment section below, and be sure to check out some of my other videos for more help with writing, literature, and of course, rhetoric. I'll see you there. Be well.